Hi, I'm Valerie with the Craighead County Jonesboro Public Library, and if you've been following this video series, we're working on our fingerless mitts project, and those we're doing 2 at a time on Magic Loop. So at this point in the project, we've got our cuffs done, and then we've got all the way up through the wrist part, and we're ready to start the thumb gusset. And so this video is going to show you how to do the thumb gusset. Very simply, what you do is you increase stitches on one side in order to make allowances for the width of the thumb. And then when you get to about this point, you're actually going to put those stitches on a piece of waste yarn and leave those aside until the end of the glove. So with that said, let's get started. How do you know when you're ready to start the thumb gusset? Well, for this pattern, it's pretty flexible. The pattern says to go from 5 inches from the turning round and then to start the thumb gusset. You could make these longer or shorter if you wanted to. You do have to be careful if you are using our project yarn that you don't make them too long and then not have enough yarn to actually finish the glove. And so on mine, the way that I did that was I know that looking at the pattern, the gusset, where that starts is about the halfway point of the glove. So all I did was weigh my yarn to make sure that it was coming in above 25 grams. And one of my balls is weighing in at, looks like 30 grams. And then the other one's in at 26. And so I know I'm at about the midway point in my yarn, so I'm going to go ahead and start the thumb gusset. Now, when I get to the end of mine, I shouldn't have much yarn left. And the great thing about Magic Loop is that you can try things on as you go. And so I could just push this down to the cable part and pull it on and say, yeah, that feels right, that looks right. And that's a good thing to do as well. And in fact, that's what Miss Brandy did on her pair that she's test knitting. She's knitting the small size when I'm knitting the large size. And so because she's knitting the smaller size, she has more leeway in her yardage, and she could make these really long if she wanted to. But she tried them on and she didn't want them to be very long, and so she said that's good and we're going to start the thumb gusset. But if I did weigh hers to see how much, she's got one ball coming in at 34 grams and another one at 36. So she's not at the midway point, but she's happy with the length of these where they are because she tried them on, and so we're both ready to start the thumb gusset, and we'll show you how to do that now. I'm ready to start placing markers for the thumb gusset, and I'm on the back side of the glove. This is actually my very last stitch, and the pattern says to knit to 1 stitch from the end of the round, so that's right here. The first thing I'm going to do is place one of my markers. And the markers are going to basically tell you where the thumb area is, and you're going to keep them on the needles the whole time you're working the actual gusset. Now you're going to increase by doing a make one, and that's where you go under from the front part of the bar in the middle to the back, and then knit into the back loop of that. So then we're going to knit our next stitch. Now the next part of the thumb gusset will be to make another make one on the other side of this stitch. However, because I'm doing this in Magic Loop, I'm going to save that until I come back around to that point on the other side of my cord. So I'm actually going to stop here on this one and go ahead and start working on getting to the other side of this glove, and then when we turn it around, I'll show you how to finish up that gusset setup. All right, so we're reaching the end of the round for the next mitt, and again, I'm just going to place one of my stitch markers. Then I'm going to do a make one. Now, to make a gusset, you just have to increase. So you could do like I say, knit front to back, or even a yarn over, but of course you would have holes in the increase, but the pattern says make one, so in this case we're going to make one. And I'm again going to knit that middle stitch, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn my needles around and make my Magic Loop changeover. Now remember, this is actually still the start of the round, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make one on this side of the Magic Loop. So I'm going to make one right here. It's a little tricky without another stitch on the other side, but it's doable. Now I'm going to place another marker right here, and that marker is actually going to indicate my beginning of round. And I'm just going to use a safety pin here because that's what I had. And then you're just going to keep going across the round like the pattern calls for. Don't forget to do this again when you reach the other side of this glove to make that extra make one. And then keep in mind as we go around that this is actually the start of the round. So you're not actually starting another round in the pattern until you've reached that marker there. There are going to be a few rounds of just plain knits in between all of the rows where you're increasing, but the pattern is going to tell you how many to increase to, and we're going to stop in this case, depending on what size you're doing, and for my case the large, when we have 15 stitches in between the markers. Now I've done my thumb gusset, and we'll use this glove here. You can see it's got there's increases right here on this side, and it's made this sort of triangle shape. And then if I flip it over, it looks the same on the back. And I've got 15 total stitches in between my two markers, so I know it's time to go ahead and move those aside. So what I'm going to do, and I'm on actually on my what we're going to call the third quarter here. I'm on the back half of the second glove. And so when I get to my marker here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the marker and just go ahead and put it aside because I don't need it anymore. And then I'm going to take my tapestry needle with a piece of just waste yarn, and I'm going to go ahead and run that through here and go ahead and take those stitches off the needle. Now this is only half of the second glove because the other half of the thumb stitches are on the other side of the needle from the magic loop. But that shouldn't matter because I'm just going to go and take my tapestry needle, turn around to the back side where the cable is, and I'm going to go ahead and run the string through there, and then I'll worry about actually taking them off of the cable when I get back to that point on the needle. So just give me a minute here to pick these all up. And then all you need to do is take your string. I'm going to go ahead and remove my tapestry needle from the string, and I'm just going to tie a nice loose knot in it right there. All right, now I'm going to pick up my needles and just go across. Again, this is, if we're thinking in quarters, this is now the fourth quarter of the glove, and I'm going to go ahead and knit across and put these stitches on as well. Here I am in the fourth quarter, and I've gone back around and I'm to my marker. And as you can see, here I have a nice row of increases that creates this little triangle where my thumb is going to go. And then if I flip it over to the other side, it looks the same. And I have 15 stitches in between these two markers. So what I'm going to do now is when I get to the marker, I'm just going to take it off because I don't need it any longer. And then I'm going to bring around my tapestry needle and some waste yarn, and I'm just going to run the tapestry needle through these live stitches. And I've already done that on the other glove here. And then I'm just going to let that hang for a little while I do my turn for the magic loop. And I'm going to pull my cable through, back around, and get set up to start on the beginning of the row. And here is where I have my the other half of the thumb. So again, just going to run the needle through and pick those right off the needle and onto the waste yarn. Discard my stitch marker because I don't need it any longer. And then I'm just gonna bring my needle through, and now you can see I've got those right here, just kind of hanging out. And I'm just going to tie this off very loosely while I continue to work on the hand portion of the glove. There is one more thing you need to do before you keep knitting, which is to cast on an extra stitch, because a lot of times when you do things like this, removing stitches, a lot of times you'll end up with a gap where that joins back together. And so a good way to make sure you don't have a sort of unsightly gap there is to go ahead and, before you start knitting here, I'm just going to use backwards loop method to cast on an extra stitch right here. But then all I need to do is just keep knitting with the magic loop as I have been. I'm going to do another 1/2 inch in plain stockinette. Then I'm going to repeat the lace section, the turning row, and then bind these off, and we'll be ready to go back to the thumb after that. So join us next time for our video on how to finish these beautiful mitts up. And thanks so much for joining us today. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more, and visit our website, www.libraryinjonesboro.org, to find out more about library programs coming to you.